Content warning. This podcast contains bones, blood, smut, and swear words.
Before we get into the good shit this week, we wanted to remind you that we've launched a Patreon. This month, our Patreon subscribers at all tiers got an extended edition game where we translated all the aspiring lictors into ideas even the internet can understand. They also got all access to Brooke and my ever-growing murder board. Muhahahahaha.
Wait, did you mean...
So if you would like to sponsor Hannah's acquisition of an infinity of bone earrings in exchange for some cool content, you can head to patreon.com/frontline5th or follow the link in the show notes. Okay, now back to that sweet, sweet Bone Zone action.
Bong. Act 1. Welcome, penitents. Hello and welcome to the Frontline 5th, a Locked Tomb podcast where brand spanking new novitiates explore the Locked Tomb series for the first time, while a couple of dried-out bone witches cackle over how little they really know. We're currently reading Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, and this week we finally found out what a lyctor is. Ew. Sob. In chapters 32, 33, and 34. I'm Marie, and I'm one of the few people who hasn't been stabbed this week.
Congrats.
I'm joined by my ever-intrepid Cavalier Hannah. Hannah, is this awkward for you, now that you know that I'm going to murder you to gain eternal life and power?
Okay, I will admit that I always assumed that my role to humanity in the zombie apocalypse would be the person who runs away slowest and therefore is, caught first distracting the zombies, and so everybody else gets...
God, what an honorable sacrifice.
Thank you. I'm just saying I always knew this was my end game.
Anyway, I'm also joined this week by two sweet buds of thalargy that are pretty rapidly transitioning into dried-out bone witch status. It's Brooke and John! Brooke and John, usually we ask you fun, zany questions about your life, but today... I actually just really want to hear how you feel about these chapters. You learned what a lyctor is, so how you doing?
Wow, the imagery in these chapters. Exciting, disgusting. But we murder boarded pretty well, didn't we, John? I really want to know what Marie and Hannah thought the first time they read this, because I imagine we were better prepared for it.
I'm actually furious how close we got. I thought we had it. And we almost had it, but we had the whole thing completely backwards. And I was furiously texting Marie and Hannah, because I know you read later than I do. So I was like...
You were so mad about the rapiers.
Oh my God, I was so mad about the rapiers. I was like, it was a clue the whole time. It was like the second thing I ever said on this podcast was that rapiers was a stupid weapon to fight skeletons with.
Yeah.
And I'm so mad about it. God damn it. I was so close. We were so close.
I think we broke them, Marie.
We definitely broke them. The thing is, that has been so fascinating for me for this podcast. And I don't know honestly, how I feel about this, that you two have such a different experience reading these books
than if I were just to gobble it up in my traditional mode.
If you gobble it up, you have no fucking clue.
No, that hits you like a sack of rocks.
It hits you like a train and you just go, what? I was such an idiot. And that's why they're so fun to reread, because then every time you reread, you're like,
a clue!
That's right. You find all of the Easter eggs that are buried in there.
What if you've reread the books 5 times already and haven't finished them?
Yes, that you've already picked up on half these details and predicted what's going to happen.
When we initiated this podcast, assumed that we would spend a lot of time laughing about how dumb you guys were and how much you missed and how wrong you were. And instead, all of our conversations are like, we need to get dumber friends. Our friends are too smart. I don't like this at all. You picked up on a ton of stuff and you made some really, really brilliant calls. And as you said, you were really close. And usually you would say exactly the right thing and then pivot slightly and just be that barely bit off. It was really funny. I really want to hear from you guys how you feel emotionally about what a lyctor is and the fact that all these people were called together with the goal of doing this lyctor process.
I agree with Pal saying it's just a gruesome and just
ghastly and obvious.
Yes.
That's exactly how we felt about it when we first proposed it.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. But I want to give the gold star to, I think it was 3 or 4 episodes ago, Brooke saying Ianthe feels like a cat among the pigeons. And that was just such a bullseye. Probably the strongest bullseye of anything we've said thus far.
Yep.
In terms of just absolutely nailing something.
And now you know a little bit why when you started having a crush on Ianthe.
I never called it a crush. I just thought she was kind of cool.
We all know what it was.
Oh,
I thought she was funny.
she is. She remains fascinating. Also, holy shit.
Yeah, pretty gross. Emotionally, you know what's interesting is you asked me that question. The kind of the thing that I reflect on is how I have like distrusted the Emperor's word. Like in the letter, when they got there, everybody's saying you can always leave if you want. Like you can always go home. You don't have to do this. Like that always felt like such a fucking lie. And it's not clear to me that that was ever actually not a lie. Like that that there was actually true intention behind that at any point, right? Given what has happened throughout this whole book. From an emotional perspective, I think that sort of level of distrust makes me very suspicious of kind of the future for all of our characters, you know, if they make it out of Canaan House alive or out of this book alive. Anyway, emotionally, you know, just because we nailed it, it still sucks. Really sucks.
I'm also just interested to know, you know, for no reason at all, for posterity and whatnot, would you ever become a lictor? Are there any scenarios that would push you one way or the other?
Question. Can you lictor people you don't like?
But then they're in you.
How do you feel about Ianthe and Babs?
Yeah, would you lictor Ianthe?
Lictor? I hardly know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, but this is a really good point. Like both of you back and forth. I think both of these are really good points, right? Because I think about this too. I'm like, all right, but could I murder someone who's a fundamentally evil person and then I simultaneously will have murdered them and also become immortal? But I agree, Brooke, then you sort of have that person's soul like living in you always, which just feels really icky.
I don't think I could handle having anyone else, enemy or not, inside of me. It's a no for me, dog.
I think I'm a soft no, but
Ooh.
if circumstances arose, then possibly.
He's open to
murder.
Mine is a couple different directions. I actually happily would sacrifice myself as a cavalier for somebody that I really loved and cared about and was worried about their...
Oof.
Yeah, I'm serious. That's just like, that is a thing that I would not mind doing. But part of the reason that I would not mind doing that is that I can't imagine anything worse than living forever.
Ditto.
That is like my worst nightmare, is that I might be immortal.
Ditto.
I'm the opposite. The immortality doesn't bother me. It's everything else.
Additionally, I weirdly would be okay murdering someone fundamentally evil, but I would be less okay with like eating them, consuming them, and using them because I don't like treating people like things. I think that's fundamentally fucked up. So I think it's a hard no on whether I would be the necromancer in a lictor pair and a soft no on whether I would be the cavalier in a lictor pair. Marie, what about you?
I think my biggest thing is I really cannot imagine being like Ianthe, like seeing where it all ends and thinking, oh yeah, I win.
She's the worst.
That's what she says. I won. You're like,
great job at the game.
It might be part of a toxic twin mentality.
Says a twin. We'll leave that for later. Our meme watch, we have another That's What She Said. It's a classic. We don't know if it's a meme or not. We should bring it up because it's classic. So we're going to have to go dig into those feelings. And if everyone could just ignore the fire alarm in the background, that would be great. As we present episode 16. The civilized thing to do. Act 2. Ghastly and obvious are my middle names.
This section of Frontline 5th is safe for anyone who hasn't read past Chapter 34 and Gideon the Ninth.
Let's recap. Chapter 32, Second House Skull. Harrow and Pal open a door without permission. Dead-ass skeletons and priests. The second house calls in the cavalry. Chapter 33, Eighth House Skull. A body has been defiled. The third house steals a key. Chapter 34, Third House Skull. Ianthe rises to lictorhood. Column is possessed. You lied to us.
I have a note about the Skull Watch. So far, not a single one has been weird. I feel like you warned us at the beginning of this book that sometimes you'd be like, why was it that house?
At this point, Marie and I just kind of breathe the entire series as one book.
Understood.
And I think we forget the difference between them and some of the things that only show up maybe later.
Later, it gives you information that you wouldn't have had it explicitly otherwise.
Interesting.
Now that we're all back to being friends and not assuming that our partner is an evil decapitator gone rogue,
Lovely.
Harrow and Palamides and Gideon and Camilla decide to go on a little crime spree. And that means that they're going to break into a Lyctor lab that they don't have a key for.
I actually think this is just bonkers. There was one rule. One rule.
What? There's a mass murderer on the loose.
Yeah, but that was not against the rules, Brooke.
Yeah, murder was not against the rules. The not having but it also makes me wonder what the hell the point of the rule was.
Yeah.
Other than to specifically...
It was a hint. And they have a key. It's just not the key.
This is true. They create their own key.
And there we go. So, I mean, and I guess that's basically what it is too, is maybe they can get permission because Pal has seen and handled the key. I love this so much because at the same time you're like, okay, what good is that going to do us, Pal? And Harold's like, okay, describe it to me. And he just looks at her like,
I love that too.
the fuck? What good is that going to be? It's I can't describe a key at a molecular
there could be
level.
another world where he's like, it's a 2 millimeter out this direction, take this degree and go 2 millimeters out in that direction.
You're right. That would have worked too. The other version is that Pal stands there and tries to draw it on a piece of paper and it just looks like a squiggle and he gives up.
Can I just throw out that this is just such excellent foreshadowing for what's going to happen once they get to the Lyctor room with Ianthe, where he touches the writing on the wall and freaks out. So you have an idea of just how good he is at reading things he touches.
Yep. Well, so the whole point here, the principle is, right, that the key was won by Dulcinea, but her keys are in the hands of Silas. And I also love the thing where both Camilla and Gideon are like, well, we could take Column. And Palamides is like, well, okay, fine. Even if you beat him in a fair duel, Silas is still not going to give you the keys.
Yeah, what makes you think that he's going to play by any rules? All of the, he just assumes that anything he wants is God's truth.
But I've held the key, so I know it down to a molecular level. You are a bone witch, Harrow. You can shape bone.
Such good teamwork.
And Harrow looks at him and she's like, we'll describe it, right? And then we have this thing where he's like, how do you describe something at the molecular level? And then she's like, no. And Gideon's like, wait, you're going to read his mind. And they're both like, well, no, but kind of.
Dude. That's so good for Harrow.
I actually really love this. I think this is the first time that we've watched Harrow use her bone magic to make something that wasn't a skeletal shape. She's made parts of skeletons, arms that'll hold
Bone
her up
corsets.
and stuff. But I love that she's literally using this Play-Doh, just reading his mind, molding it into a key.
And it's hard for her.
She's also reading somebody else's mind. I don't think she's ever been close to anybody else ever.
Yeah.
This is true. At least she knew Gideon well enough to sort of know what might be going on in there.
But then again, Pal's probably the most organized brain you could ever possibly enter.
That's another lovely thing where she's like, if you get distracted, and Camilla's like, he doesn't get distracted. As if
Guys,
this had caused problems before.
The anti-ADHD. It's awesome.
And so Pal also is like, well, I have rights to the key anyway, even if we're just making it up, because I completed the challenge for this room. And then he describes that it was a little escape room puzzle where the challenge had a single molar and he had to find the molar's owner, which happened to be one of the skeletons upstairs. And the skeleton let him make a plaster cast of his clavicle. You guys get why that was the joke, right?
Because it's a sexy bone? No.
I missed this completely. I was trying to figure out why this was an inside joke. I couldn't figure it out. Maybe it just went over my head.
It's okay. Well, it has to do with key, right? They come from the same origin.
Oh my God. Wait, you guys.
And so actually the bone is named because it is shaped like an old fashioned key.
Oh my God.
It comes from Latin clavicula, which is little key.
So that's why it's a joke, is he's like, what do you mean the fucking clavicle?
Wait, I gotta look up what a clavicle. I don't know what the bone looks like. This is supposed to look like a key?
Queen, this is me Googling etymology in the background.
He gets to the box, and we had talked about this before, like, what would you feel if you'd gone to all the work of a Lyctor challenge, and then...
There's no key there. But wait, we know it's Dulcinea who had gotten there first.
She's speedy quick.
This tells us a lot about what Dulcinea knows.
I'm mad suspicious.
She knows about the skeletons being, like, interactable, like not just bone constructs, right? Clearly.
Right, so what are they?
They're revenants. They're revenants.
They're revenants.
They're not quite revenants. Revenants are like shards of ghosts that you bring back.
Right, so he describes them as being the opposite of Protesilaus, who is like a preserved body with a fragment of a soul. These are a fully competent soul attached to a rotting body that eventually just turns into like bones that are attached. Ew, can you imagine?
They do make a point of saying, like, a revenant that came back and attached itself to an inanimate object is going to have a hard time hanging on. Like, pinning a soul onto those bones was a big deal.
Yeah.
Because there's no trace, right? Like, that's what Calamity says, is like there was no trace of it, like of the soul in the original body. They take the soul and put it into another body, which is part of what we find out is part of the Lyctor process.
Yeah, and this is incredible work also because, I mean, so like Hera was mostly just jealous that the skeletons were too good. She like didn't fully clock that they were made in this way.
Dulcinea knows this, and then it like leads to a series of other questions that you have to ask about like where the power for this comes from, how are they sustained for so long, blah, 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 that like I think can lead you to a lot more hypotheses than you could come up with without knowing that they were hideous corpses.
Well, also, and isn't that the point of, like, it does explain a little bit of the power source thing of, like, if you were trying to do this as a construct, you would have to be putting out an enormous amount of power. But if you are doing this as a soul holding the bones together, that is different.
That the soul itself almost provides that power and keeps it running.
It seems like it's like the soul is an extension cord into like death energy, basically.
So, okay, so back to the Lyctor lab, there's another tooth, and Harrow unravels it.
That was the weirdest fucking thing.
Into a long ribbon that says 500 into 50. It is finished. Whatever the fuck that means. There's also a bulletin board with swirls of pins. So there's little small clusters with like 1 white and 3 colorful, or like 1 white and like 5 colorful, and then like 2 bigger ones that are like stringed in between. And then there's like 1 huge one, cluster with a white pin with like hundreds of colored pins. And Pal like starts counting, and Gideon's just kind of like mentally like counting along with him in her head.
That feels like it's the priest, like it's teacher and the 2 priests, and then all the skeleton constructs getting mapped out on the board.
Yeah.
And then the interesting thing is that they're all connected by twine or like rope. Like what's one of they're not like they're murder
like
boarding,
a murder board.
Murder boarding, yeah.
And but so it's interesting that when teacher dies, everything else that was connected to him also dies, which is interesting.
Looking
they can
back,
break
that
those threads.
Seems to be the case. Interesting. Why would they be?
So somehow it's 500 souls total, but then the 50 must
Into
be the
50
3
bodies.
priests. The 3 priests and
47.
the
47
skeletons.
The other thing that they say explicitly is that the little ones are always 1 white pin with a group of 3 around it. And presumably those are the skeletons. But what I want to point out here is that they actually need more than just 1 soul in order to power the whole thing. That like they can use 1 soul with intact functionality and brain in order to know how to like make dinner or whatever the fuck the skeletons are doing in the background. But they actually needed to build multiple in to make it a more functional, more real thing.
Even the other 2 priests that only have maybe dozens of souls, like, don't speak.
Right, they're basically NPCs. They're nothing.
It's only teacher with his hundreds.
One of them says continuity is a marvelous thing, and Gideon is like, that's the most
Feels
boring thing
super
anyone's
NPC.
ever said.
Yeah.
Super NPC. If you went up to again, that's what he would say every time.
Yeah.
Can I just say, so like the next scene, there's the binder with the notes, and like it's pictures of everyone, and then you flip and it's freaking teacher, and I just literally went, Oh, motherfucker.
Well, because you had just clocked that.
Again, we were so close. He's not a like we had said he was a Lyctor. We thought he might be the Emperor at one
prototype.
point. Yeah, exactly. He's like the mold of a Lyctor. It's like where they figured out how to shove
an aspect of Lyctordom.
Yeah. How do you shove souls into a body and keep it all together and coherent?
Yeah, so there must be a couple other Lyctor labs that seem to be involved with him because it's like integrated with his flesh. It feels like there's a couple steps I feel like he represents.
Yeah, he might be 2 steps.
I also do love, I just want to like shout out the like super iconic nature of this, where this is such a trope where like you see a picture and, oh God, that person's been alive the whole time. Like, you're like is that them in that picture from 1940? Oh my God.
It's how you figure out the vampire.
Oh yeah, always.
You see a picture of Paul Rudd from 1900.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's like you knew the teacher was old and that there was something weird with him, but then to be like, this is what he is?
This dude's older than the Lyctors, yeah.
Also, actually, not for nothing, but there literally is, if you would actually spend time thinking about it, which none of us did, none of the 4 of us did, on the first house there are skeletons and there are 3 priests that are well past childbearing age, even if any of them were uterus havers, which it is unclear that they are. And so there is a question of like, where do they come from? If these had just died, you know, like, are they flying in new priests continuously? No. Like it literally has been this cast of characters.
We haven't had a funeral for a long time.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So that would be a fantastic time to talk about what's going on among our main characters. But yet again,
interrupt
at that very moment,
plot device.
The fire alarm goes off.
God, a fucking fire alarm. Way to just throw an anachronistic element in here again.
But the thing is that I find fascinating is that it is pointed out that the reason that everybody in that room immediately freaks the fuck out is because they live in environments that a fire alarm, I think like the quote is, a fire alarm could be the last thing you heard. Like, it isn't like you can get out of the building and your house is going to burn down. It's like a fire on a ship.
It is your house and you're in space.
Yeah, yes. You are in space. If you are in space and you hear a fire alarm, you are fucked. Fire alarm's always a bad thing, but it's also like doubly, like they have a very serious response to a fire alarm. And so they run out into the Lyctor lab and into the common spaces. And they run past like a skeleton that has like fallen into the fountain that wasn't ever filled up, right? So like you can already see that something's weird is happening, and they go into the kitchen and the sprinklers are going off and there's a small stove fire, and that's what set off the alarm. And there are no skeletons. There's only piles of bones and their little sashes. And I think Harold like goes to touch one and it like just crumbles.
It's 10,000 years old, right? Like it's super old. As soon as you touch it, it disintegrates.
So they go to find Dulcinea, because that's their next priority. And she's okay, but the priest who is watching over her is peacefully dead. And she's like, it's not me. They're kind of like, okay, what next? Like, there's nothing we can do for Dulcinea. We got to figure out like what's going on, like why the priest is dead, why are the skeletons disintegrated? They say, are you going to be okay? And she's like, what can anything do to me now?
Yeah. And Pal says something like, the living have to be our priority now. So they are like, we got to go find everyone else.
So then everyone who isn't half or fully dead in a sick room heads off to the wing of Canaan House where the priests live, because they have to find Teacher and find out what's going on. This is the only time in this entire book that they have decided to go find Teacher when things seemed like they were going to shit. And that is not who they find first. Calamities throws open a door to find Judith Deuterus sitting in a chair with a vicious stab wound through her middle and her arm wizened and crumpled at her side. It looks like, it sounds very much like that ward where you like put your arm through and it like just sucks the life out of it. Mm-hmm. And beside her lay the bodies of Teacher and sort of Marta II.
Yeah, gruesome descriptors there that my brain did not let me fully imagine.
Yeah.
Good brain.
Marta's skeleton has been ripped out of her body.
That happens.
Whatever that means.
It's like Looney Tunes cartoon style, basically, is like the description of that. Yeah.
It isn't just that Teacher is old and he's been there this whole time. He's the dude who unironically claps his hands when he's happy about things and says just bizarre shit and stirs the pot.
He's a cute little useless side character with insane magic.
He did that.
Right? Like, he must have so much power, so much necromantic power to be able to do that shit.
So I had it here. Is Teacher a necromancer or has like a spirit of a necromancer in him? Because he does a bunch of necromantic magic at the end, right as he's about to die, and he's controlling, in theory, all the skeleton constructs because they're
Is
all...
a necromancer's body... It seems like a necromancer's body is required to do necromancy given kind of like all the shit that goes into Harrowheart. Like, I don't think it doesn't feel like that's a soul thing. Maybe it is.
Yeah, he's a necromancer, right? Like, I think that's the easiest, like, that's the only way to explain it. And then once he dies, all of his constructs, right, like, die with him.
He's also a necromancer powered by however many colored pushpins are around him. He's powered by like 100 souls, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you're saying, was he a lictor? He wasn't a lictor. It's like,
Like, he's powerful.
And he's like pretty much immortal up until he is fatally wounded.
He was the prototype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that it took
He
500
just maybe doesn't have
souls.
cavalier fighting spirit.
Or they didn't find out how to cleanly, like, attach the soul, right? Like, he's got, like, parts of souls or something. Like,
Yeah, it was like a sloppy job.
Well, they needed hundreds, where a lictor is just one extra.
he was strong enough to be killed by just a regular necromancer and a cavalier, right? So, like, if he actually had, like, we see how powerful Ianthe is in, like, the next chapter with one fully functioning soul powering her.
So, version 1, but unclear on what the upgrades are.
Yeah.
So Judith explains he wouldn't listen to reason, so she and Farta. I mean,
it is done.
she and
forever.
I don't know that Marta
referred to
deserves
as Farta.
that.
She doesn't deserve that. She doesn't deserve that.
You're
that,
right.
I
It's
think.
Judith that you love to hate on.
Yeah. She
Go
and
on.
Marta fought Teacher for access to the one single transmitter in Canaan House, and they do send out an SOS. You can see the transmitter hanging out the window. They are currently sending out the SOS to the only place that you can, which is the one line out, and it goes straight to the Imperial flagship. So the Emperor apparently is going to be on his way. And Judith is very proud and broken that she and Marta were able to avenge the 5th and the 4th and fix the problem that none of you rest of you could. And Harold's like,
Whatever that was.
yeah, you fixed nothing.
It's also so cold. She's about to die. Her cavalier is dead. And Harrow's like, this was worthless. I want you to know it was for nothing. You fuck.
Fucking cold, isn't it?
Yeah, like this is what Teacher was. He probably wasn't the one killing people. And so you stabbed him for nothing.
Your cavalier is dead for nothing.
And now that you've called for help and the Emperor himself is coming, like, now what?
I think I bottled this up after reading it because we got distracted. But, like, yeah, you rephrasing it this way is
Oh, shit's cold.
heavy.
Yep.
I love it.
Yeah, so Teacher piles onto this because he's not completely dead. John?
A little bit alive.
He's only mostly dead.
He would probably go for a nice MLT right about now, and he says, you draw him back to the place he must not return to.
Is that what it is in the audiobook?
Yes.
His voice in my head is Deckard Cain from Diablo.
I have no idea what that sounds like. Could you give a demo?
We'll play it when we're done recording. I'm not going
To
try
be clear, everyone, we literally are going to do a Patreon extra where John explains video games to the rest of us because it is so clear we have
Okay.
no idea what the fuck is going on.
So Diablo, what was the Bone Storm one? World of
That was
Warcraft?
World of Warcraft, yeah.
And then he says, Lord, one of them has come back. And
God,
he dies.
he's so irritating. Everybody's so irritating with their like little half details.
See, I love this so much. I feel like Teacher, as a person who likes drama and likes to stir the pot a little bit,
Perfect.
he really
Perfect way to
loves
die.
dying with that one last almost comment.
You're saying this is the best way he could have gone out. He's proud of it.
What the fuck, Teacher? So Judith insists on holding Marta's rapier, and she stays in that room surrounded by bodies waiting to die, as the rest of our core crew head out to try and figure out what the fuck is going on.
Excellent foreshadowing of a necromancer holding a rapier, by the way.
Good point.
And how about the repeated phrase of like a necromancer shouldn't have to watch their cavalier die?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. Sorry, got some news for you.
Yep.
It's how you do
Sorry.
it.
Yeah. Yep. in strides the eighth, just when you least wanted them to. They always pop up just when you least want them to announce that the third house have defiled a body. I need to stop doing my impressions of Moira quirks.
They're pretty good, actually.
Are they? I'm doing great then. Okay.
Yeah, it's working.
And yeah, indeed the third house have. So the body of Abigail Pent has a hole in her abdomen the size of a fist. And Powell at first is like, they took her kidney. Oh, wait. And then he's super pissed. And he was like...
That's definitely a meme watch, right? That's Charlie the Unicorn.
Wait, oh my god.
we can maybe...
Ancient internet subculture.
Yeah. I don't know this one.
You don't know Charlie
You've
the
never
Unicorn?
Seen... Are you serious?
Oh my god, they took my kidney.
Candy Mountain, Charlie. We're going to Candy Mountain. Nothing.
All right, again, add it to the list after this. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, that's going to be a Patreon bonus. We'll come back.
Okay. So, yeah, Calamities is really pissed because he went looking for the key, and the key has been hidden inside Abigail's body this entire fucking time.
Can I say, three of us are cis women on this podcast, and so we're all aware that fashion for women frequently neglects pockets. And I appreciate that as a necromancer, you have pockets everywhere, just all over your skin at any given moment. You just pop it in your abdomen, you pop it in your thigh.
She's a flesh magician too?
Well, here's the thing. She might have done it, or someone else might have done it. The point is, it can be done. Pockets forever.
The implication of somebody else doing it is weird, stirs the pot. I don't know what to do with that little detail drop. You got ideas, John?
No, I got nothing.
Yeah, so they're like, okay, we know which key this is. It's to the door that has been trying to be, like have us kept out of it, right? Like, perpetual
who the
bone,
fuck did that?
Hide the key.
Still don't know who clogged the door.
Wait, can I also point out here that before they leave, first of all, we find out that Silas never bothered to go in any of the Lyctor labs despite having
Silas.
keys. He's the worst. But the other thing that I really like is Colum, who is not the worst, has a moment where he's like, hey, I feel like we've all forgotten about these cremains over here. There's two bodies and we only know who one of them were. And they're like, we'll deal with that later.
They're like, we don't need to worry about that. The living take precedence.
Yeah, but you're right. Like the key goes to the door that had been stopped up with regenerating bone, with such impressive regenerating bone that Harrow had to like siphon Gideon in order to get it out. Yeah.
They go there and they're like going like in like really cautious and being like,
they left the key in the door.
Yeah,
they didn't fucking care because the key is still in the lock. Let's go in and see what's going on.
They do have a little Princess Bride moment where they're like, but if they left it in the keyhole, then they knew that we would see and we wanted them to, like, it's a trap
moment.
Yeah.
The dizzying intellect of a Sicilian.
Yeah, and this Lyctor lab is different than all the other ones that we've seen. The other ones we've seen have been like very much, they felt very much like I would have walked in and been like, oh yeah, this is familiar as somebody who has worked in science labs.
Right. They're very like utilitarian. They are not, they're not a place to live. They're a place to like sleep while you're not working.
Yeah, like sleeping bags on the floor, a little like pretty cushy that the second house had a loft.
Yeah.
This one is beautiful. It's like light, airy wood floors, windows, frescoes of trees and flowers and birds. And it's gorgeous, except
we don't know whose room this is, right? Nobody, do we have any clues to go off of here? They didn't tell us what color the key is. They didn't tell us, we get vibes. It's not the sixth, it's not the second.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we know, we have a sense for which keys it's not.
It's not the sixth, it's not the second, it's not the...
We know Silas has the 9th, the 8th, and the 6th. So it could be the 7th. It could be the 5th, 4th, 3rd.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Feels like it's probably the 4th or the 5th. If it's like an airy, bright room. I don't know. That feels 5th or 4th house.
Well, whatever house it is, it's a very different vibe than the rest of the labs. Light and airy and beautiful, except for a couple things. One of them is in black letters a foot high across one of the frescoes is "You lied to us." Not ominous at all.
Not blood, though.
Not in blood, though. And second, you have devastated, dead, and downright smug faces, respectively, of Coronabeth, Nibirius, and Ianthe.
Devastated, dead, and smug.
Yeah. So Ianthe is spattered with Nibirius Turn's blood, and she's lounging on a cushion. Coronabeth is weeping nearby, and Nibirius, who has been stabbed through the back, through his heart, is dead on the floor.
I bet his hair's still perfect, though.
Not a wisp out of place.
And his lips are parted. It doesn't mention that there's lip gloss, but I'm sure there is.
Obviously, he uses lip balm.
Can I just say at this point, I once again was furious because this is when you start to figure out what actually happened, and we were so close. I was so mad. The villain monologue that's coming, I was just like, God damn it, this was so well done. I appreciated the hell out of this whole chapter, and I also appreciate you guys for giving us a third chapter this week, because again, that would have been 2 chapters would have been.
It would have killed you. It would have killed you. This is the one where you can end, and it's like it's a bad place to end, but also okay.
It's like a satisfying place. You're like, we fucking learned. We get it now. We know what's happening.
We can chew on some stuff. So I adore the fact that Ianthe has been waiting 380 pages for an opportunity to gloat and give her villain monologue. And so she just dives straight in. And she's like, she was always better than all of you. None of them ever noticed. Nobody ever notices because, she had shared Harrow's views that the Lyctor challenges are all pointed to impossible levels of energy, and her specialty actually isn't animophilia. She just does that for show.
I mean, asterisk there. When push comes to shove, she immediately goes to fat. That's like her first.
Yes.
Anyway, we can go on. Go on.
It's not just for show, but it's not like her true passion.
It's not what she's interested in.
That's what keeps the lights on. My true passion is comedy.
Yes, exactly.
Precisely. And villain monologues and studying large-scale energy transferal and resurrection theory. She's interested in the place between death and life. The place over the river.
Kind of like reading a immunology paper. Just a whole bunch of gibberish.
There's also something really interesting she mentions about the soul of a planet in here, which will feed into conspiracies later.
I'm sorry, Hannah is dying, and I'm just like in complete solidarity with Brooke because
I've been reading immunology papers all week.
Yeah, as you will have learned over the course of this podcast, Brooke and I are microbiologists, and goddamn, immunology sucks.
And I'm an evolutionary and developmental biologist. I stay even farther away, and I can't even emphasize enough. Like every time I see a talk about immunology, I just get angry. And it's
Why
exactly
are there so
because
many
of
numbers.
Stop labeling your cells with random acronyms. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, okay, we're done now. So John is right that she does say something about the soul of a planet. Do you want to tell us?
So she basically says, what would you need to resurrect all the houses? You would need the soul of a planet.
How much energy is in the soul of a planet? She says that nobody ever noticing is like a pro and a con kind of situation.
Yeah.
That like Coronabeth gets all of the show because she's big and showy and charismatic in the hair. But that lets Ianthe like operate in the background.
And be the greatest necromancer of her generation.
You can tell how bitter she is that nobody ever realizes how fucking good she is.
I love everybody fighting for that title and her being like, I'll prove it with my actions.
Yes, exactly. Well, also, she's like, I figured out all the fucking challenges all by myself, you
None
fuck
of you
faces.
even noticed.
I never got into a Lyctor lab before this one. I literally just did it from my head. Didn't have to look at the theorems, you dumb six-housers. Okay, I'm done.
And the whole time that she's monologuing, her eyes are living a whole life on their own. They're spinning around, showing all white. Then the pupils and irises are intermingled shades of brown, purple, and blue.
Wait, at some point they tell us that her eyes are normally purple. Always got to have the random purple-eyed person.
Like amethysts at points. Yeah, so I saw this and I immediately went through and reread looking for eye color for the entire book up to this point. So again, in the theory, but it's basically just Babs's eyes, because Babs's eyes are described as brownish blue.
What the fuck does that mean?
His eyes are blue with flecks of with those heterochromia of brown.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so now her eyes are apparently a mixture as they are going through this monologue. They're shifting.
Yeah.
She's also kind of struggling. It doesn't seem like things are great for her, right? At some point in the middle of her monologue, she curls up and goes, ugh.
It starts vibrating at one point. Or like phasing, basically. She's like phasing, kind of, yeah.
And she also is like talking to herself the whole time. She's like, I don't know, she's a little bit out of her mind and she's clearly out of her body. Like,
is this her like flipping between being like an insubstantial soul and a substantial person? Like this is...
Well, let's talk about what it might mean to be a lictor, because she tells us what a lictor is. She's like, I fucking figured it out. And she says, it didn't take the deep calculus, which I love, which is something that Brooke brought up real early on, which 16 came to Canaan House and 8 lictors rose.
Absolutely nailed that part.
I'm not talking about like real deep thinking here. You had 16 and now you have 8.
Not building rockets.
We crushed this part. We just flipped it.
So Ianthe tells us how to become a lictor. Short form. You kill your cavalier and then you eat their soul and absorb it and use it as an infinite battery to power your fun little necro projects. But she also does the long form where she gives all 8 steps, which is why there are 8 labs, apparently. So, step 1, preserve the soul with intellect and memory intact. Then you analyze it, understand the structure and shape. You remove it and absorb it. You fix it in place. You incorporate it, you consume the flesh, you have the reconstruction where you get spirit and flesh working together, and then you hook up the cables and get the flat power flowing.
That one doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm viewing it as an extension cord. You literally just like plug their soul into the like whatever the river, I guess, or death, or like whatever the other thing is, and it's just like
it's whatever siphoning must be, because she refers to Silas and says, that's a cinch for you, that was your house.
Yeah, it's like hooking up the cables partially. I mean, John's theory is that potentially you're like siphoning from power from the river, but either way, you're hooking up your cables to that soul so that you can siphon from that soul, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah. If you go through it now, like you can pick out which houses are which, right? Like incorporate or like fix it in place is probably the 7th house, right? Because they're like the preservation of the body, and then
good job.
Consume the flesh is probably 3rd house, right? Because
she's constantly eating things.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Her own body, Babs's body.
Right. Well, and we've seen the 2nd house and the 6th house.
Yeah.
So
and what was the 2nd house?
The 2nd house was the, I would say it's probably step 7, because you had to...
Oh, spirit and flesh?
Yeah,
seeing through somebody else's eyes.
Analyze it as 6th house, I feel like.
Yeah, probably.
You're right. Wait, but 6th house was fixing it in place, wasn't it?
We went into the 6th earlier, which is why actually my theory is that the 6th house contribution is that first part, which is preserving the soul with intellect and memory intact, because they managed to like keep those souls functional in all of those skeletons. Yeah. So that's my theory. But I analyze it is very 6th house, right? Conceptually. Yeah. I don't know. Marie and I do not know. We never find out what all of these are. So this is all up for grabs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and so then, boom, you're a lictor, Harry. And also a murderer and a soul eater of your best friend, but like a lictor.
Jesus Christ.
And Silas...
air horn.
And Silas turns to Coronabeth and is like, please tell me you didn't know about this. And... Ianthe's like basically like, what the fuck are you talking about? Coronabeth is dumb as a box of rocks. She's not a necromancer.
Called that one. We got
Good
that one.
Good job, John. Absolutely nailed that one.
From the very beginning, as soon as, and I never did. I read it so fast that I was like, wait a minute.
I wouldn't have seen it even if he hadn't said it. No, I would not.
This is one of the few things that I'm really proud of. This is the only thing I picked up on before the two of you did. Like, when I first read it through, the very first time we hear Ianthe and Coronabeth talk to one another, I'm like, oh, she's not a necromancer.
Wow, your conspiracy mind was already full throttle, huh?
That's the only one I got, though. The only one.
That's a very good one. That's super subtle. Nice job, guys.
Yeah, I got none of them. So anyway, Silas isn't gonna sit back and just let Ianthe be a lictor. Although I think that it's actually really fascinating that Silas, this is the only conversation that I find Silas interesting. The only time in this entire book that I find him interesting. Because you have to remember, right? Like, he is the devout, faithful believes like wholeheartedly in whatever this necromancer god is, your kindly master, your necrolord prime, your resurrector. And you have been commanded to come here and become a lyctor. And yet he basically says, if God himself came down and asked why I wasn't a lyctor, I would like fall on my knees and beg forgiveness that I wasn't, but like, fuck no.
Yeah, this is an abomination, right? Is kind of his.
But it's incredible. Yeah, I mean, you're right. She is exactly the personality type who would be like, well, you got to sacrifice for your king, and then stabs Colum through the heart.
Colum thinks that's happening. Yeah.
Exactly. Colum fully expects
that.
Colum's
like, oh, I'm about to die. And then in a really like, I think this actually, yeah, like you said, the only interesting things Sal's ever done is like, brother Colum, I'll forgive you for thinking that I would do this, right?
I need to stop talking about how fast I read these the very first time I did, but it's like, it's one of those things on a reread where you're like, this hits. Like, this is fascinating. And it's a really powerful character moment where you're like, these two characters that are really just there to be annoying and like cause problems and just be somebody to kind of hate. And then you have this moment where you're like, wow, like that's not.
But they have so much complexity. We have this moment where we really understand how honorable Colum is. And this is a weird moment where we suddenly understand that Silas has the potential to be honorable too.
Mm-hmm.
Which we saw earlier is that, he grew up as a child who Colum liked, right? So there's still an ounce of that left in there.
Yeah.
It is lovely.
But in any case, Silas is like, well, this is fucked up. And so he orders Colum to attack Ianthe. And Ianthe fights back, and it is not Ianthe and her little necromancer body flopping around with a sword. Instead, it is very obviously Naberius's precise moves in Ianthe's body. Except it is still Ianthe's little necromancer body flopping around with a sword because she doesn't have the muscle that Naberius has.
She's a little weak. The sword is still too heavy, but at the same time, I think this just speaks to Tamsin's incredible writing of choreo and writing of fight choreo, because it is so immediately obvious. The way that Naberius is written as a fighter is precisely the way Ianthe is written as a fighter. That like, it's his moves so carefully and precisely in her weaker body.
In any case, too bad this isn't a Cavalier duel, because Ianthe starts playing dirty and using absolutely disgusting necromancy. One of the first things that she does is she like bites her hand and then spits a glob of fat at Colum that turns into a fat bubble that encases her.
Which then like melts into like bloody, gory, fat pools, puddles, globs.
A bloody, fatty, gooby version of Portal? Where she can like, I still...
Yes! That was exactly what it is. I'm reading this and I'm going, she's just disappearing and re-showing up. And then the show notes, the script's like she's in Portal. I was like, that's exactly what it is. It's disgusting.
It's so gross. There's like at some point where it like rains down on everybody and it's just like bits of like blood and fat and viscera and you're just like...
But she also like grabs Silas, like teleports with Silas like up into the air, right? Like she comes out of the ceiling or whatever.
Well, that's
like,
because she like portals down through the floor and then the
falls
portal
from the
is
ceiling.
In the air.
That's a straight up Mortal. That's a straight up Mortal Kombat move.
Is it?
At this point, Silas is like also is siphoning Colum, trying to fight back, and it's like not going well.
Yeah, so like Silas is entering the fight as well. So it's like Colum is fighting, Silas is also fighting, but Silas is siphoning Colum while he's fighting Ianthe, and then he starts drawing more and more energy, and Colum's like, please don't put me under while I'm trying to like fight for you, right? And Silas is like, trust me, I know what I'm doing. And
forgot one little detail.
Yeah, so Silas like starts drawing more and more energy, and then he starts siphoning Ianthe, it seems like, right? Because Ianthe's like aging and like skin sloughing off, but she's not like looking at Silas in horror while this is happening. She's looking at Colum, and I think she says something about like, well, now you're fucked.
Harrowhark freezes, and so it seems like the necromancers all immediately know something bad just happened. Because Harrow feels it coming a second before we...
A new enemy has appeared.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
We skipped over the part where while Ianthe is monologuing, Pal backs up and touches the paint on the wall.
Oh my god.
And freaks the fuck out.
Yes.
He freezes.
Because what is that?
Oh, I'm assuming he touches the paint. He can like figure out who painted it or like where it came from or like any of the details around it through like his psychometry. And so he's like, oh, fuck, like something happened. Because even Gideon's like, oh, he's normally twitching. More. He's twitching and moving around. And now he's like touches it and he like is like, oh, like he just stops.
Anyway, Gideon says his power bank shut off or something. Who wrote that on the wall? We don't talk about this entire chapter. It's just like, yeah, it's there, but it's like, who, what, where, why?
Whoa, also when? Because, like, has that been there since the Lyctors left 9,000 years ago?
Yeah,
but everything in the Lyctor labs is preserved as fresh.
That's
so
true.
I feel like that's like, that could go either way. Or has someone gotten in which case, like, was it Abigail? She's the one who had the key. Like,
or was it during the time that Ianthe went in there and killed her calf? Like, yeah, right. Is it
the person that blocked it? Yeah. Yeah, so Column's eyes turn black, and he turns into the Corinthian from
the Corinthian?
Yeah, from
oh, I've almost got it. Can no longer. Dude is now ruined. Sandman.
Yes.
Wait, okay. I should have known better than to try and Google this ahead of time, as opposed to just let you two tell me about monster lore.
So the Corinthian in Sandman is a demon from hell who manifests as a guy with no eyes. He's just got teeth, like a mouth for both of his eyeballs.
How come my Googling didn't find that?
Which is exactly what Column has.
Yeah,
with multiple tongues. It's very creepy.
I'm guessing this is what Teacher was afraid of when he was siphoning down in the facility, which is that if you go too far, he becomes corrupted, which is what I think this appears to be. Right, he is inhabited by what seems like starts behaving like something from The Exorcist. Like his head turns 180 degrees around. Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Gideon describes it as like multiple people walking inside of a human suit that they've like never used before. Like he's walking as though it doesn't make sense. His body doesn't understand how to move, and he's doing things that humans certainly can't, like turn their head all the way around.
Yeah, you can hear the neck break. And Silas is just like, oh yeah, no problem. He like walks straight up to this like demon thing that is in Column and goes like, I bid you return.
What do you think that like the neck breaking was not going to be an issue?
Right.
Things were still fine. Things were still recoverable. Things would go back to normal after this. What?
Yeah, I do not understand. Again, fucking Silas. We had a moment and then he ruined it. And that's fine because he gets stabbed through the throat.
Yep.
And Gideon, being Gideon, jumps into the fray and starts trying to fight this fucking thing and is being strangled by its tongue.
Right. It's like tongue is lengthened and comes out of the mouth, wraps around her neck.
I guess that's why I couldn't find it in Googling. That was what I was Googling, was long tongue.
Long tongue.
Very like classic demon in like imagery.
Yeah.
But also, like, the thing is freakishly strong, and we once again get an idea of just how good Gideon is as a fighter, because, like, she almost dies, like, twice, like, getting chopped in half by this thing, right? Like, the thing, she, like, swings her sword, expects to, like, kill it, and the thing is like, nope, just, like, one hand block it. It's, anyway, yeah, possessed by demons.
But then, yeah, Ianthe casually steps in and snaps its neck, and apparently that kills it, gets done with it, like, wrenches its head off, and Ianthe tells everyone there's worse shit than her in the house. Have that one for free. And then Mike drops and steps into a portal of blood. And there she goes. And everybody's just kind of looking around, and Corona Beth is still in the corner crying. And everybody's like, oh no, she's sad about Babs. And she says, she took Babs. And who even cares about Babs? She could have taken me.
Yikes.
Yeah, so you feel bad for her, and then you're like, oh, god damn it, you're a terrible person.
I feel worse for her.
I still feel bad for her.
It didn't occur to me that, like, Ianthe basically had to, like, almost premeditate this choice of, like, who did she want to, like, live with internally forever.
And she didn't want Corona.
Is that why Corona was practicing the sword? Like, did they figure this out a while ago?
I don't think so. You think so?
Well,
I don't think Corona ever knew.
I don't think Corona ever knew, but my theory is that Corona wishes she could have been her sister's cavalier.
Yes.
That, like, she, instead has had to spend her whole life pretending to be a necromancer, which she's not, knowing that her sister is better and smarter and having to constantly take shit from her sister. And Corona Beth and Ianthe have, like, an unbelievably creepy codependent relationship. They're always sitting on each other's laps and, like...
And yet they hate each other.
So it's that kind of, like, really fucked up tension but they need each other desperately and they want each other desperately. And I think I find this incredibly relatable, actually. Horrifying, deeply fucking horrifying, but relatable as Coronabeth is sitting there just weeping, feeling like left out, that she wasn't murdered. Like, it's so fucking tragic.
She wasn't needed.
Yes, that's exactly right. That she was never worth anything. She was just the dumb sidekick, with the hair.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I think we broke the Tridentarii, and we are down to just 7 living souls in Canaan House. So, it's time for a game!
There are horses and a man on fire, and I killed a guy with a tridentary. What movie is that from?
I don't know.
What?
No clue.
That's from Anchorman.
Interstitial. My imagination is better than your description. And I'm not having a good time here. Well, that sucked a lot. I mean, it was awesome, but, ick. I think we all wish we could rewrite history sometimes, and on today's game, we can! That's right, we're playing a Frontline 5th favorite, Multiverse, wrong answers only! Today, I'm going to ask our hosts for their version of what happens when the 6th, the 9th, and the 8th walk into a bar. A lecture lab. Wrong answers only. Go!
Look, you can't ask me to do, like, punny jokes. It's not gonna happen. Like, I'm not built for that shit. But what I can do is I'm just going to tell you what I think that each of these houses are ordering at the bar.
Okay.
I like this.
Go for it.
Okay. So the 8th, I need your help. I'm stuck between two things. So the obvious choice is a White Russian.
I went White Russian right away.
But it is a little too substantial. Feel just a little, maybe it's the right amount of substantial. So the other option is a vodka martini, because that just like sucks you dry and there's nothing good about it.
Yes, I think it's that one.
My impression of this, because I also kind of took it that way, was just that the 8th is there as an undercover to narc on people because they're pushing for like
prohibition.
I was gonna say apple juice for the 8th.
He's just gonna get out.
Oh my God.
Childish.
See, this is hilarious.
Childish.
Okay, see, I went a totally different direction with this, but I love that Brooke and John's version is that the key is still in the door. They open the door and inside is a bar. Keep telling us what they're ordering, guys.
Okay. I don't know what you're going for in this.
Wait.
No, this is great because it's going to be 2 completely different things going on. Continue, Brooke.
Yeah,
What
it's very funny.
The 6th and the,
Is this
and the
not
9th
the
order?
stupid
This is
the
perfect.
rabbi,
Keep
the
going.
priest, and the
This is perfect. It was
Walk into
a
it was
bar
a joke
joke?
based on that. It was entirely a joke based on that, but I was like, I can't come up with punny things, so it'll just be a multiverse wrong answers only. Just what happens when
Okay.
they open the door,
Okay,
but I
so
didn't make that clear.
Okay, well, everybody's ordering drinks in this Lyctor lab. Okay, so the
I
8th
love
is
it.
getting I'm leaning towards the vodka martini, even though that feels a little too classy. But they do like to pretend they have class.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but I would like to point out that the 8th is 2 people. Maybe Silas orders a vodka martini and Colum gets a White Russian.
Love it. Perfect. Okay. The 9th, they're drinking like whiskey neat.
Gideon is. Harrow is drinking water.
Yes, room temperature.
Room temperature water, no ice.
No ice. Water, no ice. And then the 6th, I think I'm seeing like Calamity's ordering like some like absinthe cocktail with like chartreuse. Something that's like sort of like
I love that.
unnecessarily erudite. Kind of hipster, but like not truly cool.
Wait. What about Camilla? Because I have one for Camilla that I think is hilarious, but I want to know what you have for Camilla.
I was going for one per house. So what did you got for Camilla?
A Cosmo.
Fuck yes.
I actually really like that for
Love-
her. I really do. And I was going to say, I weirdly actually, for Calamities there, I kind of love the idea that he just like orders some really over-the-top fruity thing where he gets like a banana daiquiri or something.
I was like thinking about it being like maybe he's got a little like JD from Scrubs and he goes and gets an appletini.
Appletini.
Okay, so my very favorite thing, this is putting too much information out there. Like my husband and I occasionally go out to like a fancy bar. Invariably, he goes towards fruity and I go towards whiskey. And so we will order our drinks and the bartender will put our drinks down and then I will move the glasses.
Switch them. Yep. Every time, I'm sure.
Every time.
I had Gideon as a bourbon person and or a like a Caesar, like a Bloody Mary, basically, like vodka.
Ooh, the Caesar, that's got clam juice, right?
Yeah.
Love
yeah,
that
something
stuff.
like that.
It's actually delicious.
Pal is definitely drinking like a Long Island iced tea. Or something that like college nerds first time at the bar, like what do we order? Something you can actually drink.
Heard of. Yeah.
Yes, it's a Long Island iced tea. Yeah, and then I feel like Cam is actually like secretly just like has been drinking the whole time, like is a nerd, but like has been drinking. So she's ordering like whiskey like on the rocks, basically. Just,
She's
like,
cool. She's the cool one.
or he says go loud and it's just moonshine.
She goes, tequila shots!
Yeah, go loud is tequila.
Wait, what was the actual purpose of this prompt?
All right, here's what I imagined. My version of this was like multiverse, like what happens when they open the door, wrong answers only. Okay, so they stand outside the door. They're freaking out. A body has been defiled. Teacher is dead. Judith is dying. There's a fire alarm going off. They open the door and all of the remaining cast go, surprise, happy birthday. And it's Harrow's 18th birthday party with just like
Corona Beth got everybody together. The 8th house,
absolutely.
Ianthe.
It's actually even funnier if like it was
Judith
fake
is
dead
dead.
bodies. It's like Magnus put this all together as like a fun surprise for Harrow's
God.
18th birthday party.
Oh my God. Is that actually a present to give her the bodies?
It would be. She wanted the head in the first place.
They've wrapped up Pro's head for her. And they've been like, actually,
my
Finder's
God.
Rights is real. See, and I also misinterpreted this completely because I didn't read the show notes. I just went by the text. And I was like, oh, like what kind of a lab are they walking into? So instead of, I think and it wasn't the one that Ianthe's in, the lab that that the 6th and the 9th walk into, where they unlock the door and Camilla goes, because it's such a mess. I was like, I don't know, like, I would think it'd be amazing. I'm imagining, like, what the other Lyctor labs might look like, and I'm like, I just want one that kind of looks like Belle's library from, like, Beauty and the Beast.
I'm kind of shocked that isn't a thing. Yeah, why don't they have their own little personal libraries? I love that.
So cute. Okay, John, tell me that you also just glossed over the text that Hannah sent about this game and read the show notes and came up with an actual joke, because you are in a good position for this.
Clearly, I was not clear via text or in the show notes.
Yeah, so originally I was like, what would happen if they all just walked into a bar? And so immediately I was just like, the 6th house, like, Cam can put his hands on the bar and immediately just feels all the gross shit that has ever happened on this bar, which would be just like horrible. And Gideon's for sure ordering shots. And then the 8th house asked to be put in VIP, but does absolutely nothing in VIP except take up space. Like
They literally just sit there silently. They like.
Yes.
I love this.
And they
so
don't,
much.
they don't
drink
let
the water.
they don't even let anyone else into VIP. Like they're ordering like bottle service and they're just leaving the bottles there so no one else can have the bottles.
Perfect.
Anyway,
Just to meet their
apparently
minimum.
we took this game in 4 different directions.
But none of us told a rabbi, a priest, and who's the other one? Walk into a bar joke.
So
I've got
a
one of that.
rabbit,
I've got
priest,
one
and
on
an
hand.
imam. I've got one too.
That's the joke I was going to tell.
Damn
Go
it.
ahead.
No, I got there first. I got there first.
Yeah.
A rabbit, a priest, and an imam walk into a bar. And the rabbit says, well, clearly I'm a typo.
Yeah.
It's an incredible joke. That's very funny.
As everybody laughs.
Yes.
That was literally the exact joke I was going to tell.
Both John and I are fighting to tell
You
this
both get
joke.
credit. You both get credit.
I also actually appreciate the fact that we went in 4 different directions speaks to multiverse theory. So I think we nailed it this week.
Yeah, we nailed it. And none of that happened. So let's talk about things that are definitely true because it's time for rampant speculation. Act 3. Well, now you're fucked. Now is the time when we ask our locked tomb novitiates to give us their conspiracy theories. So Brooke and John, What the fuck is happening?
We learned a lot in these chapters. A lot of questions, a lot of outstanding questions were settled, right? We figured out how they make nice skeletons. We figured out who Teacher is. We figured out that the Emperor seems to be alive. That we know where the last key was. We figured out at least part of who's in the incinerator. Figured out how lyctors are made. Yeah. We've confirmed indeed that the Corona Beth is not a necromancer. And we also saw what happens when somebody gets emptied in Canaan House. So a lot of shit. My approach to what the fuck is happening this week was to figure out what we still don't know. How did Dulcinea live through Pro's disassembly? I won't call it a death since he was already dead. Is she actually some sort of a lyctor? Is she pretending to be sick? Is she a sick lyctor? Is she an imperfect lyctor since, like, part of Pro's soul had to be in the puppet?
I'm 100% on board now that Dulcinea is a lyctor or has the spirit of a lyctor in her body. And so...
So she's either an old lyctor or a new lyctor.
Yes. I haven't figured it out quite yet on that piece, but I think she's 100% a lyctor. And part of it is that I went back and read through all the eye colors when Ianthe's eyes start changing, and at times they describe Dulcinea's eyes as bright blue and then dark blue. And her eyes are really, really bright blue at one point, and then they describe her when she's sitting in bed as having dark blue eyes. I think it was maybe a clue, or maybe just me reading to it, and it's the lighting's different. Anyway, I still think she's a lyctor, and the reason I think that is that Protesilaus is also killed stabbed through the heart, right? And it was supposedly an accident. So what I think might have happened is that the 7th house lyctor is still alive and wanted to try to save Dulcinea for some reason. And so taught her how to do the lyctor process, but the accident was they fucked up lyctoring Protesilaus.
Oh, yeah. So it's imperfect, and that's why she's still dying.
Yes, was that Dulcinea then kills the lyctor and does it properly. So Dulcinea lyctored a lyctor, and now has a lyctor inside of her. The spirit of the necromancer that was the one half of the lyctor. So she's still her.
I'm sorry. It's just the number of, now that we've made Lyctor, I don't even know her, and then a Lyctor inside her. I'm trying so hard here to keep a straight face. Go on.
So Protesilaus was killed the same way as Babs, and then the body's in the furnace, and I think that probably the other body is the body of the 7th house Lyctor.
Oh! You think it was just left on the shuttle or something? And no, but they got pushed off the edge, so... questions.
The accident was they were trying to save Dulcinea by turning her into a lyctor. They fucked it up somewhere, and now they did it.
And that was
time
in Canaan House.
Yeah. Yes.
Weird.
Or something along those lines. She's a lyctor, I think, or part lyctor.
Okay. Who clogged the door's keyhole in the first place? The one that we ended up in this lyctor lab.
I'm still on the theory that one of the old lyctors is going around murdering people, and we haven't figured out who it is yet. It still might be a character that we have not met. Part of my theory is now we have to go back and reevaluate basically all of the things that took an immense amount of necromantic energy that we were how did they do that? And it's obviously, well, they either lyctored them or they stuck a soul somewhere and used it as a battery, right? We know that's now a thing that they can do is they can stick a soul in a construct, they can stick a soul into another body. So basically the Protesilaus puppeting makes a lot more sense if Dulcinea is a lyctor because she could just do it herself, right? It doesn't have to be the whole 7th house, she could just do it. The constructs all make sense, Teacher, and then the giant bone monster, that seems to be very easy if you just have infinite necro energy flowing through your veins via your best friend's soul battery that you're hooked up to.
Best friend's soul battery. Okay, so you still think that there's another individual in this?
I still think a lyctor's killing everyone because now there's a lot of lyctor spots to stick around. Because again, we know that some of the lyctors are still alive, or at least we think some of the lyctors are still alive, and they probably don't want to be replaced, and that's your motive.
Ooh, except that they're 10,000 years old. Well, maybe there was a coup. Okay. This kind of leads us back to what has come back? What is Teacher saying has come back? What is it that entered Column's body? Do we think that's the same thing that I'm connecting those dots properly? Because it was straight fucking demonic, right? We thought for a while, or I thought for a while it was going to be ghosts, revenant sort of situation.
See, I thought it was just Teacher saying that it was Ianthe becoming a lyctor. One of them has come back. There's now a new lyctor.
Oh.
Because he's already dead when Column gets corrupted, right? Or he's dying in his office / room. Yeah, Teacher's already dead.
Already dead.
When he says Lord One has come back, I think we have a new lyctor.
I interpreted it as whatever the bone monster was that's killing things is the thing that's come back.
Oh, so then that would also feed into the theory that it's a lyctor killing everyone.
So a lyctor maybe came back. Okay, interesting. what entered Column's body, I think, is the same thing that like is managing to possess Bone Monster or something. That my head is connecting those two things as being the same thing. And it is a possession sort of construct that is clearly demonic as fuck.
Yes, and it's really interesting because when Column dies, it says he turns into brackish fluid, like comes out of his body, and brackish is salt water, like partially salt water.
Ooh.
And so
didn't notice.
Underworld, so straight Poseidon underworld shit.
We have they float in salt water to talk about secrets. Like there seems, I don't know, there's something there. We are connecting salt water with the realm of the dead somehow. Like the tomb in the ninth house has salt water in it. They swim in a saltwater pool to tell secrets. When a demon gets killed, it releases salt water. Rivers aren't salt water though.
Brackish is usually the point at which a river meets the ocean.
Oh, Jesus Christ, that's so good, Brooke. Continue down your list.
What is written on the wall and who wrote it? We already kind of discussed this a little bit. Did we decide what we think it is?
I don't have the foggiest idea. I have no idea. All we know is Pal probably knows now. Pal knows now, right? Because he touched it.
Pal has a lot more information than we do currently, yes. Okay. We will return to that. Pal still seems to think that Lyctordom is flawed. He's touching that, like, the lettering on the wall when he tells Ianthe that, like, whatever she thinks she's done, she hasn't done it. Like, he still thinks that there's something wrong with what she's done, that it's not the thing that she thinks it is. If that thing is immortal Lyctordom, that's all. Like, there's subtext that we're missing here.
Yes.
But he still seems to think that, right? Like, he hasn't changed his mind after, like, watching it happen, after somebody, like, proven the theory.
Yeah, because we think he figured out Lyctordom a while ago, right? Like, he kind of, or if he didn't figure it out, he kind of knew exactly what it was supposed to be. And so he seems to think that they still messed it up somewhere. Like, she didn't do it perfectly.
Is it just like, maybe it's just a moral thing where he's just like...
yeah. Or yeah.
No,
I don't know.
No,
we don't know enough yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Emperor, he's coming. I guess.
He lives on a ship or like a floating space station or planet or something, like something that can move around.
Yeah, something that's not on a planet. So we still don't know why he can't be here. What happened to this planet? Ianthe's dropping clues here. What are your thoughts about this death of the planet thing?
All right, so I think my current projection for the timeline of how things went down is that, all right, humans discover necromancy in the facility, right? Like they discover how to break into the higher power, God, like the original God, sends a flood to destroy everyone. That kills everyone on the planet except those that are like in the apocalypse bunker of Cannon House. Basically, like the Cannon House is like a safe point or something. Original God sends a flood, kills everyone. That, of course, releases a ton of death energy. God Emperor, new guy, uses all that death energy as a necromancer to lictor God, overpower God, and then still think the soul in the tomb is the body of God, like the original God. And then there's something about killing the world's soul to resurrect the houses. So he becomes a god.
The planet's soul, yeah.
Kills Earth to resurrect all the houses, and then it's a dead planet, and that would explain why everyone leaves and goes to these other planets. But so then that implies that all the other planets might have souls too, right? Like if Earth has a soul, why wouldn't the other planets have souls? But then that just gets down to a weird...
Maybe there's the whole, like, each planet has a god, right? So maybe this is specifically Earth's god, right? Like if you're thinking Roman Greek mythology, Atlas is, I guess a Titan. Is it? I don't fucking know.
Atlas is the Titan holding up the sky. And Earth. But yeah, so then the last thing I was just like, maybe Cannon House was built as a death lightning rod, and that's like when the whole Earth gets killed, like that's how they gathered all the death energy to Lyctor actual
and that's
God.
Why it's such a grave?
Yeah.
That's I love that analogy. I'm bought in. That's such a good image. I like it.
Yeah. So yeah, original God's body in the tomb. God Emperor became God by using the flood that God sent to destroy humanity once they discovered necromancy. And then killed the soul to resurrect all the houses.
So humans take over from gods.
Yes.
Okay. Wild. So then the last thing, well, do you have other, the last thing I just have written down is like, what now? Can you imagine, like, what happens after
Ianthe? Big question, Brooke.
What happens after Ianthe leaves the room? That's it. That was the question. What do we do now that Ianthe's left the room? Like, what's the first thing that anybody says?
But the whole, like, teleport through blood thing makes me think that it just reaffirms that it's probably a Lyctor killing everyone, because we've never seen who kills them, but apparently Lyctors can teleport through like bodily fluids and other things, and so it would make sense. And if Dulcinea is a Lyctor, then it doesn't matter that she has crutches if she can just teleport through blood, and she can just control Protesilaus. If she's been puppeting Protesilaus, Protesilaus can go do things, and then she can teleport around.
Dude.
And it also explains why she didn't die when Protesilaus like faded, right? If she's just a Lyctor, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Dude. Okay.
Right,
so next up, we all go back to Dulcinea's room and accuse her of something else.
Yeah, so if we're doing Lyctor watch, I still think Gideon's part Lyctor, or imbued with the spirit of a Lyctor. Dulcinea is part Lyctor.
Forgot about that. Mm-hmm.
And then now we have Ianthe is a Lyctor. So that's 3 of the 8 Lyctors accounted for.
Well, we only have 3 necros left. Dulcinea, Pal, and Harrow.
And then we have a 4th Lyctor who's killing everyone. So then we're missing people.
Ianthe. Sorry, 4. Okay, we got 4.
Lyctor who's killing everyone, Ianthe, Gideon, Dulcinea. We're missing a lot of Lyctors.
So Pal and Cam are kind of like this strange,
some of them are dead,
outside of your theory, don't have any sort of like Lyctor influence.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't seem like Cam knows, I think, everything. Or not Cam, Pal knows everything, but doesn't want to become a Lyctor. I don't know. I'm going to be so annoyed when we get off this podcast. I read the next 2 chapters and we hopefully figure this out.
This is part of the pleasure of it, John. Love it. Take it. Seize it.
The murder board has gotten so big.
It's not about being right. It's about having a good time.
Anyway, I guess we'll see if any of that happens next time when John and Brooke join us for the climactic final chaos of Gideon the Ninth in chapters 35 and 36.
And if you, dear listener, are, like me and John, reading along for the first time, make sure you find our reading calendar on our website, frontline5th.podbean.com, or follow us on Instagram or TikTok, which are both linked in the show notes. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends and give us a 5-star rating anywhere you can. And if you didn't like it, feel free to lie. Now head off to sleep, my baby necros. Mommy Marie and Daddy Hannah has some deep spoilers to discuss. I cramped my finger counting down.
You did what to your finger counting down?
Cramped it.
God, we're old.
These are the perils of podcasting.
They don't tell you about this in podcasting middle school.